Hello and Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. We're here doing a video today on Mula Nakshatra. There will be an eclipse in Mula on the night of Christmas in the Western Hemisphere. And there will be 4 planets in Mula at the time of the eclipse. Mula occupies 0 to 13 degrees, 20 minutes of Sagittarius, and there will be 6 planets in Sagittarius on 7 if you count Pluto on the day of this eclipse, but 4 will be in Mula: Mercury, who will be just 1 degree in, Jupiter, Sun, and Moon. And Jupiter is very combust, it's less than 3 degrees away from the Sun. And the Moon, of course, is new because this is a partial solar eclipse. And so Mula is a very intense nakshatra. It's a fierce nakshatra, and it has qualities of intensity and chaos and destruction to it. It also has qualities of generation to it. It's not much of a preserver or a maintainer, but it can be a very creative force. So for people who are following these kinds of things, this eclipse in particular, I would say, is a very powerful moment to chart a new course, set a new direction, to mentally and physically, however you can, empower a new intention. Of course, this eclipse is also happening very close to the New Year, where again in Western culture on January 1st, everyone thinks of, there's a cultural mind form around having a New Year's resolution. So the cultural mind form also generally supports this notion, but it's very empowered by this eclipse. There is, of course, a huge potential for destruction inherent in this nakshatra and therefore inherent in this eclipse. But there's also the huge potential for new beginnings. And Mula, we could say, is in many instances, nakshatras mirror each other 180 degrees across the sky. And in the instance of Mula and Ardra, this is certainly true. There's a kind of axis there, and Mula's deity in Vedic times was known as Nirriti, who is a very sort of wrathful outsider kind of feminine goddess, just as Rudra is. So you could also refer to her as Rudrani, and this nakshatra is associated both with Kalima and with Dhumavati. Dhumavati is the only one of the tantric wisdom goddesses who has no partner. She's pictured as an aged crone on a funeral cart with a begging bowl and a crow dressed in rags, and her name means smoke, and she represents the final dissolution, the collapse of everything. Nirriti, in a way, is also not associated, she's associated with destruction in a different kind of way, and you could kind of translate her name as no rhythm, or no rhythm, no regularity, no rhythm, no ritam, no so because there's both a generative chaos before there's rhythm and order, and there's also chaos at the time of any great collapse or destruction of anything. The Shakti of this nakshatra is the Shakti of destruction, Bharhana Shakti. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that right, but that's the word. And the desire of the nakshatra is to find the root of all progeny, or to find the root of all things. The symbol is a bunch of roots bound together. And this nakshatra has no clear marker star. It points to the black hole at the center of the galaxy, and the way black holes function is they suck matter and light into them, and then they basically turn everything into nothing. They actually are a portal to something beyond the constructs of time and space. And they're also, they also are seen as generative. It's seen as the generative womb at the center of our galaxy, which is where this generative power comes from. But in essence, Mula is trying to find the root of things, the very bottom of things. And just as they say in karmic philosophy that you have to burn the seeds of karmas in order, otherwise they will sprout when the time is right. Just like seeds in the earth, they may be lying dormant, but water them and give them the right season and they'll sprout. So in the same sense, there can be a thing with Mula Nakshatra of having the roots of something destroyed or pulling things out by the roots so that they can't reform or grow again. And there can be everything to do with roots, so there can also be a theme of deep roots to life problems, life issues, etc. The root symbology also ties these people very much to herbal forms of healing, and not just to herbs, but also to unusual, unique, esoteric forms of healing, things that mainly affect the subtle realm before manifesting in the material realm. It's associated with magic and witchcraft, and some capacity to utilize Shakti in a primordial kind of fashion, we could say. Now Nirti, who rules her name can be translated as a few different things, but I'm translating it as no rhythm. She is. They actually have a Vedic ritual to pacify karmic problems related to this nakshatra and to this deity, in which you offer her something in the southwest direction. You go down to the southwest, and I believe it's alcohol and something else, like might be meat, basically things that are very tamasic. Don't quote me on this exactly, though. You have to look it up if you want to do it right. And then you go wearing black clothing, and then you make these offerings. You take a bath in the closest river, and you get out of the river, and you put on white clothing, as an effort to attempt to transform this karma. And so this nakshatra too, it can be associated with a kind of underworld aspect, and with people who have to go down into the underworld. In some sense, people who make these journeys down into the underworld to surface transformed, reborn, etc. But anyway, in Vedic sacrifices, they're always begging this goddess not to appear, because she tends to be one of those things where people know that when she appears, things are going to transform, and that's that Kalima quality too, Kalima, where people don't always want to be transformed. One of my Jyotish teachers had a placement in Mula, and he in fact had Rahu in Mula Nakshatra. Rahu rules snakes, and he told a friend of mine to bury a snake in the backyard to pacify some negative karma. But the friend, this Jyotish teacher was generally widely regarded as a saint, but this friend became very worried that the doing so would actually set off a chain of destruction for him that would be worse than what he was already suffering through. So he decided not to bury the snake. So people who have something, a quality in them that makes other people uneasy in some sense, because they know those people come with transformation, or because Mula people, while Nirtis is the daughter of Adharma, Mula karmas can be so intense that people can become very dharmically exacting, very morally exacting, because both because this nakshatra ties people also to the theme of dispossessed humans. So the thing about begging Nirti not to attend the Vedic sacrifice is that, like Ardra, this nakshatra rules over the aspects of life that humans prefer not to have in their face. So people who are handicapped, people who are disabled, people who are outcast in some kind of way, and those aspects of life, garbage heaps, things like that. Like Rudra, who rules Ardra, always gets the leftovers at the Vedic sacrifice. So if you drop something on the floor or if something breaks, you then offer it to Rudra. And Mula is very similar, in which this theme of leftovers, other people's trash, junk tends to prevail, and Mula people, because Nerti rules poverty, this is what happens when you're very poor, is that, you know, you will get hand-me-downs from other people, you will shop at thrift stores, etc. You will sort through junk trying to find something useful. So Mula is also has this very make-do quality to it, um, and you know, often a great struggle with material embodied life, both in terms of connecting to the proper resources to achieve some kind of dharma, and also in terms of it has no marker star. So in terms of establishing a clear dharma or a clear course of action, this can also be a problem for Mula people, which is why, like Swati Nakshatra, people have to become their own decider, or very clearly vision a future and then hang on to that vision and head in that direction. Now, because so much suffering is associated with it, one thing that suffering does is make people start thinking real hard about, well, not everyone, but one result of suffering can be that people start to think a lot harder and more deeply about things, and because Mula is associated again with some kind of profound depth, a very profound depth, Mula people tend to think very seriously, and then the suffering quality also causes people to think intensely, seriously about things. So there can be a kind of profound insight and a profound originality to Mula people. Bob Dylan has a line in one of his songs, if there's an original thought out there, I could sure use it right about now. And originality is surprisingly difficult to come by, because with 8 billion of us down here, we can pretty much bet that everything we've thought, felt, and said, many other people have done so too. So it's quite remarkable for people to come up with something that is truly has the hallmark of originality to it. So again, there's this kind of very extreme quality, and like some other nakshatras that are very unstable, there's a kind of instability to Mula, where both the depths are more common, but both the depths and the heights are very profound depths and very profound heights, and there can be also, it's associated with Kalima, and you know, we have the figure of the tragedy comedy face, and Kalima is atihasa. She's laughing loudly. She herself is completely free from the restraints of material life, and although Mula people often are very restrained and bound, or work with people who are, so you find this nakshatra with people in wheelchairs, people in jails, etc., those who serve them. But you also find this nakshatra amongst those who live there. But there's this. She has this quality of complete freedom, like complete laughter. Like the whole thing is just. It's the laughter of a freedom that is rarely present to humans. So. What do you think, Zach? Should I share a personal experience around this or not? Probably not, eh?
It depends on how gruesome it is.
So at any rate, so there's both comedy and tragedy, and again that kind of flip-flopping between, or sometimes even the tragicomic, you know, the one doesn't know whether to laugh or to cry. So there's that. Now, Nirti is also the sister of Lakshmi, who is the wife of Vishnu, and Lakshmi visits Nirti on Saturdays, of course, but these two have a very uneasy relationship, because one is very much about dharma and blessings and generosity and nurturance and the order of life, and the other is the complete opposite. So one thing that happens for people who have this asterism strongly configured is they often have a very difficult, awkward relationship with a sibling, particularly often one of the same sex, although not necessarily, in which there can be just great difficulty in sorting out of the relationship. And I would say, like Ardra, this can also be true in the parent-child dynamic, where there can be just great difficulty coming to any kind of mutual understanding of one another. Now, while this nakshatra is usually associated with poverty and despair and protracted kinds of difficulties and being outside the main of social order, occasionally this goddess can give a boon that is more magnificent than anything Lakshmi usually gives, but that is very rare because to please this goddess is not easy. It requires qualities of heroism and exactitude that are difficult as humans to follow and to achieve. The another theme here is in terms of the make do attitude and quality of this nakshatra is redeeming things, making things that are broken, redeeming them or making them useful again. So there can be a theme of taking that which is unused or not in a useful place and making it useful again. People who make interesting creations out of junk, that's a very Mula kind of thing to do, as is trying to create turnarounds over tragedy generally. So because of the depth and the seriousness, this can also be people who function to help others resolve tragedy into something useful, like psychotherapists and people like that, etc., etc. What else about this nakshatra? The theme of arrestment and restraint. So Mula people often cannot behave like other people behave because there's some kind of strange karmic circumstance they can't overcome, or something strange in their physiology. The chess grandmaster Magnus Carlsen, who apparently can play 15 games of chess simultaneously blindfolded and write down the moves of each game afterwards, which is a very stunning feat of memory, has his Lugna Lord in Mula. And so, people ask him if he has autism or Asperger's, which is one of many sort of mental conditions that can be associated with this nakshatra. There can be that kind of sort of oddity to it. So he can perform this stunning feat, but I don't know what the lives of chess grandmasters are like, but one can imagine that this very quality of mind makes certain kinds of social interactions difficult for this person. And that form of restraint can take the form of, as I said, some condition that makes things difficult. And then the root symbology, yes, medicines and roots. So at any rate, these are the basic qualities of the nakshatra, or themes that are associated with the nakshatra. And as I said, Mercury, Jupiter, Sun, and Moon will be there on Christmas night. So it is a very good time to use that generative power, because Mula itself is this kind of portal, can be a portal to new possibilities, and so are eclipses, because they also disrupt the ritam, the rhythm on Earth, the sun and the moon that give us our days and nights and seasons and yada yada. So there's a kind of doubling up theme of a moment when something new can happen. But you have to think carefully about how and when you're going to drop the needle on the record, so to speak, so that you end up with the right tune in your future year. Thank you. Goodbye.